Hey everybody, welcome back to my channel. This is Tammy. Okay, so today we are putting together the cover for this fabulous boho journal. I'll walk you through what I do here. So as you can see, I'm using a file folder kind of as the base. And then at the very beginning, you saw what will be the spine, and that was a piece of packaging. It was kind of a thick cardboard, or not cardboard, but kind of a thick board, I guess. And then here I'm just measuring to the height of the journal, and then I'm going to use the file folder had some creases to kind of help it bend if you have a lot of papers inside it. So I needed a little bit wider bit of that. So here I'm just adding my own little creases. And in a minute, you're going to see why. But I often do this when I'm making fabric covered journals because I do use these file folders as the base for the pretty much every fabric covered journal I make. I do this same sort of process. I don't always use, actually, I shouldn't say that. I never have used a thicker spine until this one, but here you can see I'm going to do a wraparound journal, and that's why I wanted to widen the grooves because it essentially needs two spines. So here I'm just marking the width for the back side, and then now I'm going to mark where I want the fold over to stop. How's everybody doing? I don't know about you, but I'm getting tired of my own company. I've been in my house for 2 weeks now, and it doesn't look like that's going to change anytime soon. So thank God I work for a company and I have a job that I'm able to do from home if I need to. So I have my whole setup that I would normally have at work. I brought my monitors home and my docking station. And we use laptops as our CPU essentially. So I'm able to set up shop at home, and it's been working pretty well. It's just kind of starting to get a little bit lonely, but it'll be okay. I don't mind my own company. I've always kind of been pretty self-sufficient, and I'm always finding some kind of project to work on, and it's spring, or it will be soon in a week or so probably. I'm going to be working outside a little bit more in the yard and doing that kind of stuff. So yeah, I hope you're all doing well, and kind of weathering this weird little storm that we've got going on here. So make sure and leave a comment, or I'd love to chat. I'm like, I need to chat with anybody, please. It's so funny. I have my just regular doctor appointment tomorrow morning. Nothing bad with me. It's just my yearly checkup. And of course they, did the screening and stuff on the phone to make sure I wasn't sick or anything, and I'm not. And it's funny because I'm like, I'm actually kind of looking forward to it because, like people but yeah, so all right, so let me explain what I'm doing here. So I'm working on the spine, and as you saw, I cut two more pieces of the file folder to fit that spine, and then I have my pokey tool, which is sharp on one end, and I'm just scoring the spine piece because it's like a glossy finish. And this way it'll help the glue to kind of go into those little grooves and hold tighter a little bit better. So, and then I do this because I wanted to add just a little bit more strength to the spine, and it's amazing how adding a little bit of glue and 2 more pieces of paper essentially can really strengthen the spine up. So I've glued one side already, and then now I'm gluing the second side. And here you can see I'm kind of moving the paper around a little bit. I'm trying to get that glue down into the grooves as much as I can, so it has something to stick to and hold on to. So that part's done. And I'm trying to remember, you guys, I filmed this a long time ago, so I apologize. I'm not going to remember everything and what order it all happened in, but all right. Oh, and I apologize for the dirty green cutting mat. I needed the 1/4 inch lines on this cutting mat to do some of this stuff, but I'll get rid of it fairly soon here. All right, so as you see, I've got the back and then the wraparound piece, and then there's my spine. And so now all I need is the front piece, and I was going to try and use that scrap piece of folder, but it was just a little bit too short, so just going to measure a new one here. And, you know, I'm not being super duper, like, exact with this, and that's one of the beauties of doing a wraparound journal cover, is you don't really have to be super exact on everything. In the end, it'll work out okay, because, yeah. The other thing I really like about these wraparound journal covers is you have a lot of room to grow your journal. If you tend to turn your journals into gator mouths like me, these types of covers are really handy for that. So, all right, so just getting my paper trimmer out again and cutting those. Sorry, my voice is, I haven't been talking to anyone, and I guess my voice is getting dry because I haven't been talking to people. But sorry about that. Hopefully it's not too scratchy and annoying. Okay. What am I doing now? I forget. Oh, I'm measuring for the height. I think. Yeah. So just going to cut this off, and then I'll have my front piece for the journal cover. And we got rid of the ugly aqua cutting mat. Yay! Thinking about something. I think now I'm going to probably prepare the 3 pieces and join them together, if I remember right. So on the left side, you've got the front cover and then your spine. And then on the right side, we've got the back cover and then the wraparound. Okay, now it's time for fabric. I wanted this cover to be super eclectic and kind of be like you had the cover and it's really worn and tattered, and, you know, over the years you've had to do a bunch of patchwork and patch a bunch of holes maybe, and so then you've just got random pieces of fabric covering your cover and holding it together. So that was kind of my thinking behind how I designed this cover. So this piece of fabric right here is a gorgeous, it's like a satin. I want to say, where did I get that from? I mean, I've had this fabric for years, but all this fabric that I'm using, except for the spine fabric, I've had for years. So I don't know if you can even get it anymore, and I don't remember where I got it. I might have even got it at Hancock Fabrics, which doesn't exist anymore, unfortunately. Well, I guess it kind of does, but not in the way that we remember it. But I I decided I wanted to use that pink piece as the inside of the front cover. And then for the outside of the front cover, I'm going to use a piece of this green as the main fabric. So I'm just taking that piece of file folder and going to speed this up now because, you know, cutting is not super fun to watch. So I'm just using that front of the file folder to figure out where I want to cut on this piece of fabric, and hopefully you're not screaming at me for wasting all those bits and pieces, but don't worry, they're not going to waste. I will definitely use them. And then there I have just some water in a little spray bottle. I use that a lot of times for getting wrinkles out of fabric or paper too, actually. Sometimes just a quick little spritz of water on some wrinkled paper does wonders. Unfortunately, it didn't work at all on that piece of fabric, but that's okay. I went ahead and I hid that later. You'll see that later. Okay, so this one is the fabric for the spine. So getting really eclectic here with our fabric choices, and honestly, I do remember thinking about this for quite some time. I don't normally worry too much about, you know, my choices on materials and things for journals. I'm pretty good at trusting myself, but this one kind of weirded me out a little bit. I'm not gonna lie. The inside was super easy, didn't have any issues. This outside though, I really thought about it for a while. And even as I was doing this, I'm like, oh, I don't know if this is gonna look okay, but I'm just gonna move ahead and keep going, and we'll see how it turns out, right? So, all right, so this gorgeous paisley material, as you probably noticed, it's a really big swatch, and another one that was some upholstery material. I think I got this, oh gosh, I've had this one for years and years and years and years. I'm thinking it was given to me. I don't really remember where I got it, but I've been holding on to it for a long, long time. So I knew it needed to have a special home somewhere, wherever it was used. So decided it would be perfect for this journal, and wanted to use it as the bigger piece of the base fabric for the cover. So here I'm just laying it out, making sure I cut it right, and it was a little tight, but in the end it worked out okay. Actually, both of them were just a little bit tight, but I made it work. So here I did speed this up a little bit. I spent a long time kind of thinking about the bits and pieces of fabric that I wanted to use on this collage. So when I was watching it real time, I was like, oh gosh, it's going to take forever if I don't speed this up. So I did speed this one up, and I did cut some things out, but in the end you're going to see how things turned out. But yeah, so I'm just kind of throwing caution to the wind here, not really worrying too much about colors matching or things like that, patterns fighting each other. There's going to be some of that, so just be prepared. But it'll turn out really cool in the end, I promise. So I got a mixture of sari silks and other just random pieces of fabric. There you see I have that satin one, and the back side looked just as gorgeous as the front side. Actually, I think the back side is even a little more interesting than the front side in a way. I love that orange and pinkish red together, so I decided to put it on there that way. Who cares about the rules? I don't care about the rules. If it looks good, I'm going to do it. So I'm trying to make sure I get it balanced on both the front and then the back. If I have one piece of fabric, I try to have another one somewhere else in that same color. And these are all pieces of fabric that I had used on the inside of the journal too, so keeping it consistent. And then now I'm prepping them to be sewn, and like any collage, you gotta start from the bottom and work your way to the top, or at least that's how I like to do it. I wanted to sew around each piece of each patch so that it truly did look like each piece was added on its own and not done all at the same time. So here I'm going to speed this up again too, because yeah, we'd be here for a while if I hadn't done that. So just kind of mentally placing things, remembering where I had them, and I was able to do most of the sewing on these base pieces with them glued down like that. I just had to move as I was sewing. I just had to move, edges and corners and things out of the way. So I think I'm gonna cut to, yes, so cut to, those have all been sewn down, and then there's a few more pieces too that I didn't show originally. And now I'm just looking to see how it looks on the base piece of the file folder. Thought, well, let me see what it looks like the other direction, and I didn't like that at all. So I turned it back around the right way, and I realized I needed more on the left side because that's going to be the flap, and really that's the front. So I decorated pretty heavily on the back side of the journal, which is fine, but yeah, I'll be adding more and more to this, and it'll just kind of turn into something. This is where you really got to just go and trust yourself and don't think too hard. It's one of those things where it's really hard for me to do this sometimes. I have to be in the right mood. And that's another thing. I didn't work on this cover for probably almost a week because I kind of felt like I needed to plan it in my head first a little bit and not just go into it without having thought about it at all. I don't know if you guys are like that when you're doing your journals and stuff, or just anything crafting or creative wise. I like to do that. I know when I was making jewelry a lot more, I was always designing stuff in my head before I'd sit down and make anything. I had it already planned out in my mind because, I know what materials I have, and that's part of the fun for me. I guess I like to visualize things like that. But so yeah, I probably should have sped this up too, but I'm just trying to think of what to keep adding and what's gonna look natural, And then there you see I have a piece from the spine fabric, which we haven't done yet, but I wanted to incorporate that on the cover pieces as well. So all right, so those two pieces I've got sewn down, and then a few more, and that wasn't quite enough, so I thought I needed to add just a little bit more, and added some more of this sari silk here, and there's still glue stick down on the fabric, which is why it was staying that way. Otherwise there was no way it was going to stay open like that, but it's still a little bit sticky, and adding just a little bit more, and then I'm going to take this straight to the sewing machine, and I think I did a big old zigzag stitch right down both of those in the middle. So that's the other thing. I wanted pieces of the sari silk ribbon to just kind of be loose, like sewn down, but the edges be loose and not completely perfect. I just thought it would make it look even nicer and older looking, I guess. So, all right, I decided I needed a little bit more down in the middle of the bottom, in the middle. That made sense in my head. So went back to my ball of sari silk and got a piece of that green, and then this green has it's kind of like half and half green with like a tan, beige tan with like little purple flowers in it. It's really cool. So trying to decide where to place that. I think too I just thought it needed a little more color down there. So, and I wanted to show both the green and the tan from that piece. And I apologize, as I was doing this, as I was filming this and creating the journal cover, I didn't realize it, but I had people texting me, and like my mom was trying to call, and I don't know how, but I didn't get the other piece of fabric and that patchwork done, so I apologize. We're gonna cut straight from this one to something else, but you'll see the finished product in the end. It was the same process, just did it on the other littler piece of fabric too. So here it was really hard to see this tails of the threads. I was trying to feel them instead. Just making sure I got all of them clipped. On thinner fabrics, I don't know if you've noticed this, if you don't get them all, they'll sometimes show through to the front, like the outline of them through the fabric. So I always try to cut all those off unless I'm purposely leaving them in. But all right, so now we're just trying it out again to see how it's going to look, and I like that a lot better. I think it's a lot more interesting, and you still see enough of the base material to get a sense of what that is. So here, this is going to be a quick one. I've got this little bit of it, and then all of a sudden I think it's going to be all sewn and done. So yep, so that was the patchwork for the cover pieces of fabric. Now I'm going to construct the 3 pieces of file folder together, and just using a really cheap piece of muslin here as my unifier, I guess. It's going to be what holds all 3 pieces together. I like to use fabric because if you use paper eventually will give out. And this is something that's going to bend an awful lot. Like every time you open and close your journal, it's going to bend. And I want to make sure it's, it's going to last you a long time. So I like to use a little bit of fabric instead of paper. So now I'm just going to add a little bit of glue and glue the file folder to the material. Nothing super special here other than I always, when I'm putting this fabric tack down, and I was at the very end of the bottle too, so it was kind of a little bit thicker than usual. I always smear it with my finger because fabric tack will show through material if it's too gloopy. Not that I needed to really worry about that in this case because you're not going to see this anyway, but yeah, I feel like it holds a little bit better too. I mean, you're spreading it out, so there's glue in more surface area, right? So I don't know. It makes sense to me. So that's what I'm doing, and I'll do that same thing for the other side. It dries faster that way too. There, couple of reasons for it, right? Okay, so All right, got that side glued, and then now we'll do the wraparound side. And good rule of thumb when you're doing this is try to have about 1/4 of an inch between your spine and your cover. There you see I have pretty much the same distance on both sides, and then I'm being really careful to make sure that the height, make sure that the top and bottom match up with the spine's top and bottom. And then that's where your cutting mat with your lines, your grid lines, really comes in handy. I've done it enough times now where I don't really have to use that as much anymore. I mean, trust me, I use it on so many other things, but fortunately, I don't have to do it so much on this stuff anymore. But all right, now we're gonna glue down the fabric covers to the covers, and like I said, after sewing, your base fabric shrinks just a tiny little bit. So I did not keep that in mind. Fortunately, I gave myself a little bit of extra room around the edges. It's a lot easier to cut off the extra afterwards than add more. So another thing I've noticed that has helped is, especially when you're almost out of glue, the glue dries a little bit faster, this Fabri-Tac does. So I usually just do a section at a time. I don't usually glue like the entire cover, because by the time you would get all the way to the other side, the first glue that you had spread out would maybe almost be dry by then. I've had that happen to me before. So plus this way, you just have a little bit more control. It might take a little bit longer, but I'd rather have it take a little bit longer than feel rushed and then not do as good of a job. So here I'm just making sure to line up the right side as much as I possibly can, because my spine fabric, whenever I get that on, will hide all the stuff on the left side. So there you can see I did not get the fabric all the way to the left side, and that's okay because the spine fabric is going to go right over that anyway, so it doesn't really matter. You got about 1/2 inch or so, or depending on how wide you want your spine fabric to be, to cover that. So all right, just finishing gluing this front cover here. And one other thing I love about Fabri-Tac, it's so cool. I don't know how or why it does this, but when it's still wet, it's cold. And when it's not cold anymore, you know it's set. It's really weird. And so you can feel that as you're smoothing things out and whatnot. So that's kind of what I was doing there too. So it's kind of like measure twice, cut once, measure 5 times, cut once. I just wanted to think about how it was gonna work before I glue anything down. And make sure I glue this cover fabric right side up. That's another thing I've done before, where when it's all said and done, I ended up gluing something upside down. It makes you mad. So just the same way as I did the other one, just doing a little sections at a time. And I think here we're done gluing this one down and just smoothing everything out and making sure it's all stuck down really well. I like to turn it over, and here you can really press down a little easier and get things smoothed out better. And then now I think I'll probably figure out the inside cover fabrics. Oh yeah, rebending my second spine here. It's kind of coming together now. You can see what it's going to look like. So that's the way it'll look Now we got to figure out the inside. All right, so this one I already had ready to go. And I wondered about adding some kind of folder or something, but in the end I decided not to because that fabric was so gorgeous. I just couldn't cover it up. I wanted to keep it as natural. I wanted to keep it as is. So being super careful about how I'm gluing this because I didn't have a lot of leeway top and bottom wise. I had too much on the left side, but I wanted to make sure I was going to cover it completely height wise. And just smoothing it out, getting rid of that wrinkle. You'll never even know it was there. And I also tried to make sure not to get too much fabric in the spine area where it's going to bend, because that'll keep it from opening or actually closing as neatly. If you have a bunch of fabric in that little groove, it won't close as well. So all right, so now just cutting the inside piece for the other half using that same paisley fabric, and you'll get to see more of it on the inside because I didn't do any of the patchwork or anything, but I am going to add a pocket on the back side. So, and here again, more worried about lining up the right side of this piece than the left side, because that spine fabric is going to cover that part up anyway, where it's not completely covering the file folder. And I did have some extra, so just cutting that off. And just like, oh, I think we're going to do the pocket now. I was going to say, just like all the others, gluing it the same way in little bits and pieces. So here I'm going to my fabric stash to find, I think this must have been a pillowcase at some point in its life, or maybe a napkin. I'm not sure. It's pretty. So I decided I wanted this to be the back pocket. So here I'm just kind of measuring how wide it needs to be. I don't know how well you can see it, but at the top of that piece, it's kind of got a really pretty little design. I think because of the way it was attached to whatever it was attached to. So I decided to keep that and use it, which you'll see in just a minute. But first I think I'm going to be gluing this piece of fabric down. So yep, going to glue this down. Same way as before, smoothing everything out. I'm feeling how cold the glue is and when it's not cold anymore. Just making sure I get to all the edges. All right, now back to the pocket. It was a little bit wrinkled, so I got the water back out, and there were some little fuzzies on there. You couldn't see it on the video, but adding a little extra water this time, because what I'm going to do is press down the top and make a seam, and I'm just going to use my hands and the damp fabric to make a crease there, and then I'm going to sew a straight line right across there. And what that's going to do is make it easier to get things in and out of that pocket, and also give it some sturdiness. So did that. Oh, I guess, oh, more cutting, more fast forward. I just was getting everything all evened up there, and I did have extra material on that side. I don't know why I did it that way. I did. So, but there you can see I sewed across the top, and I did a little decorative stitch as well. It did kind of make the fabric pucker just a little bit, but I don't care. I think it adds to the charm, honestly. It's more homemade looking that way. I'm just trying to get it as straight as possible. And again, just tacking down with my glue stick there so that I can take it back and do the sewing. And I'm going to sew around the perimeter of the front cover and the back cover, and then the wraparound part I'm going to do a third sewing of perimeter. And basically all I did there was I went around it twice and did kind of like a messy line, just again to make it look homemade and just kind of thrown together. So oh, I think I'm trying to figure out where my sewing lines need to be. I was like, what am I doing there? Okay, so that's all sewn together, and now it's time to work on the spine fabric. So I'm just trying to figure out, first of all, how wide I want it, and then second of all, a nice piece of the fabric to use. I didn't want a bunch of white space to show, so that's why I cut off that little bit. Trust me, I will use that piece of fabric somewhere else, don't worry. Didn't go into the trash. So here I'm just trying to make sure it's all even and where I want it to be. And like all the other pieces of fabric, folding one side down, putting the glue down, and then I'll glue the second half. And then I noticed that on the front there, the spine fabric was the same color as the other bit of spine fabric that I had put on the front cover. So I added a little bit more sari silk on the top of that just to kind of break it up a little bit. And now, what am I doing? Oh, I folded over the extra pieces on the top and bottom, and I cut where the spine is to help that it won't bind when you're opening and closing the journal. And now I am, oh, and then so now we're on the inside, and I covered the inside with another piece of that spine fabric. Sorry, this is where I lost some of my video, so I'm just trying to catch you up. So I just cut another piece to cover everything on the inside and make it look all pretty and nice. And now I am I'm gonna do this one. I did this one kind of like a traveler's notebook, where instead of sewing the signatures directly into the spine or doing a hidden spine, I'm adding eyelets on the top and bottom, and I'm going to put elastic through those so that each signature will have its own elastic to be put into. So here I'm just measuring and getting the hole placements set up. In hindsight, I wish I would have spent a little more time on this because they're not perfectly even, but again, that makes it look more homemade, and I think it kind of adds a little bit of charm too. So, yep, so just taking my crocodile, whatever that thing is called, and made my holes. And then I've got these little eyelets that are like a burgundy red color, and gonna get all those put in. And the worst part of doing this is getting that bottom piece on and not fall off before you squeeze the whole thing together. Yeah, so we'll fast forward through this too. Because you don't need to sit here and watch me struggle through this. This was a struggle. But yep, just gonna do this 10 times because there's 5 on the top and 5 on the bottom. All right, so we're pretty much done. Kind of showing you the cover here and the spine. And I made sure and got the fabric right side up on both the inside and the outside. And that's how the back side turned out and the front. So I love it, you guys. I think it's fun. All right, using some of this thin elastic cord. I'm just going to add one to each for each signature here, and nothing special, just going to measure and cut the piece I need and make a little knot for it. Trickiest part was it's stretchy and it wants to stretch out of your fingers. So trickiest part was holding on to it. So I got all those threaded and it's ready for signatures. So I think we're going to put those in now. Yep. So I mentioned this on the final flip through, but I did not sew those signatures. I didn't do, the signatures are still not sewn together. So I did this for a reason, because I know when I'm doing my junk journal, I appreciate being able to pull each page out if I want to and work on each page and putting it back in, and then it's secure enough in the elastic or string or whatever you've got there to not move around. So I wanted to provide the option of, if you like that, I won't make any changes, whoever ends up buying it. But if you want me to sew the signatures, let me know, and I will definitely do that before I send it off to you. So here you can see it's pretty much done. We've got all the signatures in there. They're laying really well, super easy to write and do whatever you want to do. And it's thick, but it's not overwhelmingly thick. So I think it's about the right size, actually. And then this is an envelope of just extra bits and pieces of the ephemera and stuff. So I put that in the back pocket there. And I think I'm done, but I'm not. Because guess what? Yeah, it's pretty. Yeah. I forgot to do a closure. So I ended up having to take all the signatures out and redo that. But that's okay. So back to my Sari Silk ball here. And I'm going to get some of that for the closure. That piece there that is kind of a black and purple pink. I didn't use that anywhere else, so I wanted to cut that part away, and I'll use that on something else, a different journal or something. This sari silk is so awesome, but there's all kinds of really fine threads that are everywhere. So I'm just trying to tackle those here. The struggle is real, and I'm taking you along with me. All right, so I wanted to have 2 pieces of sari silk for each side of the bow. So got 4 pieces here, and first got to put stuff away. I clean as I craft. I don't know how you guys are about that stuff, but I don't have tons of space, so if I don't do this, it gets real messy real fast. Plus, it makes it clean up at the end so much better because you don't have everything to put away. So, all right, so here I'm just gathering and making sure I've got an equal amount of all 4, and I do. And I'm just gonna sew those directly to the back or the inside of that flap there. And I think I'm gonna skip that soon. I didn't even bother pinning it down or anything. I just went ahead and took those signatures out and put it straight through the sewing machine. And I did stitch around it a lot. I mean, you can see there it's really flat there. So now all we have to do is tie it up and cut off the extra, and this thing's done. So yeah, I hope you've enjoyed coming along with me on this little journey. I'm gonna have this listed in my Etsy shop pretty soon, probably in another day or 2. I need the sunshine to come out so I can take pictures for the Etsy listing. So yeah, I hope you're all doing pretty well. We're in some trying times here, but stay strong, stay healthy, stay away from people. Stay on YouTube and stay in your craft room. Yay! All right, guys. I think that's probably about it. Please like and subscribe if you're not a subscriber. I'd love to have you subscribe and join me. And yeah, till the next time. Bye!